Hello, I'm Linda Seith from The Layered Onion. Thank you for joining us. We will be listening to our amazing creators talk about their art and mental health. 48 million artists all over the world share this lived experience. The Layered Onion was formed to create a supportive community, allowing the creators to focus on their art, bringing their work from the shadows to receive the recognition and opportunities they deserve. Each podcast will feature an artist who talks about their creations and mental wellness. Art is healing. We hope these discussions will inspire you to appreciate the stories behind the creations and, more importantly, inspire your inner creator. Together, we can tackle the stigma surrounding mental health. All right. Hello, Loulou.
Hello, Linda. How are you?
Yes. Hi. Would you like to introduce yourself, where you're from, and just a little bit about you?
Yeah, so my name's Loulou. I'm a poet and a filmmaker. I'm French and I'm based in England, currently around Brighton. Yeah, I'm the author of the poetry collection Pink Goo, and I make documentary films. That's it.
Oh, well, cool. Very cool. So you said you're both a documentary filmmaker and a poet.
Yeah.
What led you, let's talk first to what led you to documentary filmmaking.
Yeah. So the documentary filmmaking came after the poetry. They were very independent things in my mind. So the documentary film was more a continuity of my studies. So I did a BA in anthropology, and that's when I discovered documentaries. I thought it was a really powerful way of telling people's stories on camera through video. It was very accessible form of sharing meaningful stories. When I found that anthropology could be a little bit inaccessible, it just bound to like the academic universe, and all the work that anthropologists would do, it wouldn't be read by anyone else, and that's not what I wanted to do. So I wanted to make documentary films because I thought it was a great great tool. And so I went to the UK and I did a master's in media practice for development and social change, and that's when I learned more how to do documentaries, also podcasting and photography. And I did my first kind of short film for my graduation film, which is called Collections of Queer Poets, and it's about the poetry community in Brighton. So I kind of started to link the two already, because I was already a poet as well, but independently from kind of my study area, if that makes sense,
Yes. So when you talk about anthropology, are you talking about, in this case, more contemporary anthropology to bring it accessible?
Yeah, closer to sociology.
Yeah, anthropology, I think, is such a broad area of study that most people think about very ancient. But there's a lot of layers to anthropology, of course.
Yeah. My studies were more like social and cultural anthropology, so really how to understand how people live today. And so this is a field that started in the 20th century, which was very colonial and patriarchal. But I'm not here to talk about anthropology.
Maybe another time, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe we can then turn to the poetry. So you said poetry came before the documentary film. So maybe tell me about poetry.
Yeah. So to me, poetry was just a way of expressing myself, kind of closer to journaling. I would, write poetry in the corner of my notebooks, and then I would share it to my boyfriend, sometimes my family, but not so much. Sometimes my friends, but not so much. And I started taking it more seriously. I think when I came to Brighton and I saw there were there was a poetry community, like other poets than just me, which I didn't know was really a fact before. That's when I wanted to get more involved. But I say that, but that's just retracing my own history, because I made a poetry zine even before I came to the UK. So I was still really into poetry then, you know.
So did you find you started thinking and writing when you were younger, and then it just grew?
Yeah, definitely. I started writing some poems in French, and I think I really started to find my voice in English and really take poetry as a form, and just writing poems as poems rather than just writing poems to journal and understand and vent, you know. But that was always, yeah, very independent from whatever I wanted my job to be or my whatever career to be. And now I start to take it a bit more seriously, I think.
So I want to go back to your thread that you started in French and then found your voice more fully in English. Can you kind of expound upon that?
Yeah. So languages are just fascinating to me, and I love to talk about it. Just whatever the way my brain works, which is always a mystery to me. So yeah, so I grew up in France until I was 18. So I wrote in French, and there was no question. I wrote in French. When I wanted to learn English, though, I would do some journaling in English just to practice it, but it would be very much like an exercise. And when I met my boyfriend, who's now my fiance, he's English, so I would start writing some poetry in English for him, and I just really enjoyed it. And then I started writing other things, who want like love poems in English. And I just figured that I could go so much deeper in my thoughts and my feelings, because I didn't have all this judgment that I would have in French that would be internalized from school, or from my environment, of how poetry has to look like, has to be like, because I studied literature and philosophy in France, so I had a very strict mindset on how poetry had to look like. That was just from school, and I just loved the freedom of the English language, that I didn't have to look like anything. It just had to be my own way, and it had to be to express some kind of truth about my life, and I just really liked that, and I just kept doing it. And now I'm trying to integrate a little bit of French, and write a bit more bilingual poetry, and kind of explore the complexities of languages. But that's very much just for the purpose of the poem itself,
Well, that's really interesting, that language that perhaps wasn't your original language gave you a lot of freedom to kind of break beyond cultural barriers, is kind of what I hear you saying.
Yeah.
Oh, very fascinating.
And also, to me, like, English is just a very fun language to play with, and because I would make a lot of mistakes in English, but they would be poetic. It's like, it's not set, so I wouldn't have all these idiosyncrasies that would be set in, like, defined in my mind. I would just be able to play with metaphors and images a lot more, and that's great in poetry because it's so creative. Yeah.
So tell me about the type of poetry you do. So do you do free verse? Do you, just explain what type of poetry you do?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have the technical terms. It's just my poetry. But yeah, I don't rhyme too much, just because I don't think in rhyming, and it sounds fake when I try to do it. I write in verse. Now a bit less in verse. I try to play with different forms. A lot of metaphors, a lot of colors, and is very mental health based. To go back to to kind of the purpose of the layered onion and everything, because I started writing poetry from a place of understanding whatever's going on in my brain. It was very brain based. And now I kind of play around a bit more, but it's still my home.
So maybe can you talk a little bit further about that tie with mental health?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so to me, the role that poetry has filled in my life was very linked to understanding and processing my own emotions, my own thoughts that are very complex. And happy moments, to me, they're not worthy of poetry, because I can just lift them. I don't have to do anything else than lift them. And when I would try to write them down, they wouldn't be as interesting, I think. And whereas emotions that are very complex, rooted in trauma, and very difficult thoughts to understand and communicate also in other ways than poetry. Like sometimes people aren't ready to listen, or you don't find the words that are appropriate, and using that in other words that aren't literal, that really helps. And sometimes the way something sounds is truer than truer to the actual emotion or to the actual feeling, rather than putting in some kind of understandable sentence.
Yeah, I think that research is definitely now showing this huge link between art and healing.
Yeah.
And by using, whether it's your painting, or whether you're writing poetry, or writing a story, or doing whatever you're doing, dancing, I think it just really helps your brain process
Mm-hmm.
the complex emotions, for sure.
Yeah.
So tell me a bit about this Brighton group. Is it a performance poetry group, or just kind of like a group that gets together and shares?
Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting. It's I would say most of the poetry groups are events, and they're performance based. Then some people there's like poetry and spoken word, and some people would be poets for performance. So most of their work would be performed, and usually that works the best in a poetry event. It's the kind of work that people relate to the most, because it's just very engaging. And some people more like me would say would just read out their work. And I've considered for the longest time that kind of my work is meant to be written and read, and just be enjoyed on the page. Although I've been very influenced by in this collection specifically, Pink Goo, I was very influenced by spoken word artists and making some kind of snappy poems, short sentences, etc. There was an attempt to create a a workshop, so we'd be like meeting up to write together, but the person who was organizing that was a mother, and she had a lot of things going on in her life, so she couldn't like keep it up. But I feel like that's something that would be really valuable in Brighton to have, which would be more poems information, and not just a final result, not just a performance, etc.
So an opportunity to kind of share,
Yeah,
and collaborate.
So, Loulou, let's talk about how your book of poetry came together. It's such a great name, Pink Goo. I just want to hear all about how you got to the name. How did you decide to pull together a book of poetry?
Yeah, so I think it was December 2021. I did a challenge which was to write 21 poems in 21 days, and it was a challenge set by a publishing company, and you could get maybe your work published if you were selected at the end. I didn't get published, but I wrote 21 poems, and one was Pink Goo. So I'm glad I did that, because now I had my title poem. And after that, I wanted to have a book together, because I felt like I had so many poems exactly that were really hard to perform live, and that it just wasn't the right space, because they're quite heavy poems, and I felt like it would be best to just take the time and sit with them. So I wanted to publish, but I didn't want to apply to so many publishing companies, and I knew it would be a long process, and it would be kind of also hard for my ego to face so many rejections, because I just didn't know how to do it, And I had a couple of friends who self-published, and I thought, that's a great idea. I can just self-publish and then have my book out. That's all I need. I just want to have my poems as a book, so that when I meet people, then they can see my work in this way. And so I did this, process of editing my book together, probably in the summer, and then by September, I published it. And regarding the name, sorry. So I had my title poem, Pink Goo. I just knew I wanted it to be called Pink Goo, because it just kept coming back, and my partner loved it so much as well. He was like, this is a great phrase, Pink Goo. This is really great. And it was just so snappy. I really liked it too. So yeah, that was it. And
well, there's something, goo makes you think kind of yuck, but pink goo makes you think, well, maybe not.
Yeah, I just don't think I thought about it so much when I wrote it. I was just so tired of, it was like my 15th poem or something. I was just like, there's possibly nothing I can write about anymore after 15 poems, like I've said everything. And I started being a bit more experimental, and then Pink Goo came out. I was like, this is fun. Like this is a fun thing. And I had the cover before I had the whole collection out. I just really liked the cover. So that
it is. It's a fun cover for sure. So
yeah.
So perhaps you would be willing to share a poem with us.
So yeah, the poem I want to share is called How to Eat Leeks Under Capitalism. I was in bed for weeks. I could only buy leeks. If I smiled at people when serving them theirs, they would hand me a couple of tips. Now I'm smiling, but I can't buy these bloody leeks. Stop asking me to go here and there, meet friends, enjoy spring and enjoy life, and when I have a tenner on me, yet all day I am doing, making films, podcasts, writings, this and that and that, and then this and then, and it doesn't pay for my leaks. I hope one day it will.
Well, that's amazing. Leeks, obviously it ties right back to our layered onion, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So I love that. So it definitely sounds like a poem that was out of frustration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And maybe even a bit in a being depressed?
Yeah, definitely. It was. I wrote it when I was depressed.
And that sometimes, well, I shouldn't say sometimes, because I certainly have had times that, all of us at the Layered Onion are lived experience. And, it's hard to put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
And you can feel that frustration. And by repeating the word, it just gives that cadence of when you're stuck, right?
Yeah. I mean, to me, it was a kind of a feeling of being really stuck and not being able to move, and also feeling really robotic. Being expect to do so much like a robot, just not being treated like a human being with needs. So that's why I'm kind of bugging like an AI would do, or like a technological software.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, just not being able to finish the sentence, like doing the basic things.
I think it's a great piece that for folks that are feeling depressed, or maybe they even have OCD and are kind of in a repetitive circle. It's a great poem for someone to feel like, oh, there's others that feel like I feel.
Yeah.
And has that been the response you've gotten from your poetry?
Yeah, definitely. That was, especially the poems that I wouldn't like the best afterwards as well, but that really came from a place of frustration. I would just share them like a snippet on Instagram, and during this period, and people would be like, oh, like, I'm so glad you're sharing this. So it'd be more a kind of activist thing. As well, I've always been very open about mental health issues, because to me they're just so political. They have to be like not public, but conversation. Because in this collection, I just show how so many of these mental health issues, they're not rooted in biology, but in circumstances, and a lot of it came out of anger for social injustice, whether it was against me or against other people. And this was definitely like the struggle of being a student, full time, and having to work part time, and just burning out. So I quit my job to just kind of live better, but then I was more in a precarious situation financially. So I just felt like, what's the way out, And yeah, that's definitely like open conversations with people.
Well, and that's part of why we started the Layered Onion, was just, there's just so many artists that find it a struggle. And bravo on you that you self-published, because you have to do a lot of self-promotion. And I'm fine promoting others, but as soon as I'm trying to promote myself, I start to go in an anxiety attack. And so good for you that you were able to do that. But maybe that's part of the gift we share with each other, is the skills that one might have that others
Yeah, I
feel.
mean, I feel like self-promotion is definitely the hardest thing in the process of self-publishing. But even if you publish, you have to self-promote yourself. Like the publishing company doesn't market yourself that much. So that's just part of trying to be an artist,
Yeah. So it's definitely not an easy path to choose. That's for sure.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
well, what I'd love to kind of ask you is, what do you think has been a valuable part for you of being in this community?
Yeah, just I really like being connected to other artists who do a similar work to mine, and just having that international link, because many of the people I know them physically, and I feel like that really opens up a kind of online platform. And I really like to see so many other artists just doing work for its benefits and trying to say something, regardless of the success or the prestige that you get, because sometimes that can be hard, trying to chase that a bit. And I know it's a community like I can fall back on if I struggle to make art because of mental health issues. Um, you know, because making art can be great to process your mental health issues, but then when you're trying to be an artist, having mental health difficulties can be a struggle, compared to other people, you know. So I just really like knowing that there's a community to fall back on and share that with.
The power of the community has been really amazing. When we began, we had no idea it would be international. That has been really such an amazing element of our community. Is just, I recently talked to a poet from India who also writes their poetry in English.
Mm-hmm.
And feels freedom from their language. But it's just interesting because people are from all over, and I've just learned so much and have really appreciated it.
Yeah,
But
it's a strong link, you know, between people.
Yeah, and I also think that it makes us all aware that that mental health, the stigma with mental health, the challenges, it's all it comes from all areas. It's not just it's everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
for sure. So one thing I have, I think I'm starting to do this more because I just want to hear what people like to listen to or read, etc. I'm finding some good reads. I've
yeah.
and from this is by asking if you have a comfort book or show or something where characters feel like friends. I know that I go to those kind of books when I'm just really feeling like I know what's going to happen. There isn't any anxiety that something's going to occur, and that'll get me all worked up. So anyway, what is yours?
Okay. Well, I don't tend to reread or rewatch stuff. So in that way, I don't think I've got a comfort read or a comfort show, even though I kind of tend to fall back on like Friends and Gilmore Girls, but I feel like everyone knows these by now, so I'm not going to promote that too much. But a film I've watched recently, which just inspired me so much and made me feel so many emotions, is called Braves. It's a French film, actually. In French, it's Entre les Vagues. And it's on Mubi. Do you know the platform Mubi?
What's the platform again?
Mubi. M-U-B-I.
No.
And they're like a platform of films like Netflix, but more independent films.
Oh, no, I don't.
Yeah, they're really good. So I recommend that. And yeah, so in January I watched a film a day on Mubi because I had like the £1 for 3 months. So I watched so many films, and the power of these small stories to just make you feel so many things. I don't know. It's very basic, but it's yeah. Do you want to know more about the film?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it's called Braves, and it's about two French comedians. No, what do you say? Actors. Theater actors because in French it's comédien, but that's comedy, you know. But the theater actors who are trying to be actors, so they do so many auditions, etc. And they are so they get a role. One is like the shadow of the other, meaning if the other can't do the performance, she's going to do it for her. And so we see them in the process of rehearsing for this role together. And the story is based in New York. So it's in Paris, but the play is based in New York, and it's an immigration story. Just the like old 60s footage of New York, I just really like that. And so one of the characters, she's ill. She's got cancer, and she's trying to hide it because she really wants to, be in the play and do the show. But they're really good friends, and then the other characters learns that she's ill, and she really supports her until the end, like until she dies, and it's just such a beautiful story about friendship. I've never seen such a genuine love story between two friends, and that like destroyed me. This film, I was just in tears for the last 30 minutes. And yeah, it's an independent French film, so I just really like to see what you can do with not a big budget.
Well, I'm a huge fan of watching international film, because I have found that when I actually, both listen and then read, in most cases, a lot of the languages I don't know, so I have to read the subtitles, that it's made me be more attuned to the full film, versus often I found, if it's in English, I'm multitasking, I'm doing something else, and I don't know that I'm really present. And so I have found these films that I'm more present. But Braves, you called it. Oh, sounds like a tearjerker, though.
Yeah.
So
it's really beautiful, and the imagery, the cinematography is really beautiful. And I found lately, being more of a filmmaker, that beautiful images, they really inspire me, and it draws even my poetry work now to just such a beautiful play on light and focus, etc.
Yeah, I think I will look that up for sure.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so maybe, go ahead. What?
Film After Sun, which is really popular at the moment. It's a beautiful film as well. It's about a story between a father and his daughter. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that. So do you have any last words of wisdom you would want to share with other artists that, have similar challenges?
Yeah, so I think it would be, if you're starting to share your work, share how you're feeling, because you're going to find people always. And the fear of being judged, or the fear of being alone, I feel like you're proven wrong most of the times. And there's such value in meeting other people, in building up communities, and being inspired by other people's work. And you just go so much further than if you're doing your little work on your own. And I think if you're trying to pursue art more seriously, I mean, seriously, not the right term, but kind of go beyond, sorry. If you go after this original, like, sharing of your art, to me, the advice would be to do the art for yourself. and what you want to do, and not what people expect you to do or what you think would do well. And just go back to whatever you want to do, even if it's a different art form or a different style. Just have fun. And yeah, life is beautiful. There's so much beauty. Just express it. And you're magic. So,
Well, that's wise words, because often we can get stuck in what we don't see that's beautiful.
mm,
And so wise words to focus there, for sure.
mm.
Well, I really want to thank you, Loulou, for spending some time with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the invitation.
Yes, take care.
Thank you for joining us today. It is an honor to talk with these amazing creators. You can see and read the artist's work in the Shallot, our journal of mental health, art, and literature, or on our website, thelayeredonion.com. Thank you.
A little